Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayat Mudirayat Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shlokir Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtikir. Reading from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 23. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, na chainam kledayanti apo, na shoshayati marutaha. Na, never. Enam, this soul. Chindanti, can be cut to pieces. Shastrani, weapons. Na, never. Enam, this soul. Dahati, burns. Pavakaha, fire. Na, never. Cha, also. Enam, this soul. Kledayanti, moistens. Apaha, water. Na, never. Shoshayati, dries. Marutaha, wind. Translation. The soul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by wind. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. All kinds of weapons, swords, flame weapons, rain weapons, tornado weapons, etc., are unable to kill the spirit soul. It appears that there were many kinds of weapons made of earth, water, air, ether, etc., in addition to the modern weapons of fire. Even the nuclear weapons of the modern age are classified as fire weapons, but formerly there were many other types of weapons made of all different types of material elements. Fire weapons were counteracted by water weapons, which are now unknown to modern science. Nor do modern scientists have any knowledge of tornado weapons. Nonetheless, the soul can never be cut into pieces, nor annihilated by any number of weapons, regardless of scientific devices. The Mayavadi cannot explain how the individual soul came into existence simply by ignorance and consequently became covered by the illusory energy. Nor was it ever possible to cut the individual souls from the Supreme Soul. Rather, the individual souls are eternally separated parts of the Supreme Soul. Because they are atomic individual souls eternally, Sanatana, they are prone to be covered by the illusory energy, and thus they become separated from the association of the Supreme Lord, just as the sparks of a fire, although one in quality with the fire, are prone to be extinguished when out of the fire. In the Varaha Purana, the living entities are described as separated parts and parcels of the Supreme. They are eternally so, according to the Bhagavad Gita also. So even after being liberated from illusion, the living entity remains a separate identity, as is evident from the teachings of the Lord to Arjuna. Arjuna became liberated by the knowledge received from Krishna, but he never became one with Krishna. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayham Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Ritam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Karunamritamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I offer my respectful obeisances to all the assembled Vaishnavas, as well as Simeshwar Prabhuji for giving me this service of speaking on Srimad Bhagavatam, as well as taking on this Herculean task of facilitating this Bhagavad Gita class for all of us every single day of the working week without fail. So thank you so much, Prabhuji, for this service. And thank you all to the assembled Vaishnavas for coming and joining me, even on such an important day like election night. So today we will be speaking on one of the most loved verses of Bhagavad Gita. I know from my own experience that a lot of kids love this verse, and it was also one of my favorite verses as a kid too. Actually, I remember Kishore Madhav from our temple. This is one of his favorite verses, and he used to always sing this verse during Gita Jayanti, and used to sing it very beautifully. So I was reminded of that. So in this verse, Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to fight on the basis of the eternality of the soul. That the person inside is never destroyed. Because as we know from the definition of a soul, of the nature of a soul is Sat Chit Ananda. Sat meaning eternal, Chit meaning full of inner knowing, and Ananda meaning full of bliss. So the soul being eternal, us being eternal, we cannot be cut, we cannot be destroyed by any sort of weapon. So he's encouraging Arjuna as such. So some background on this what we've been speaking so far. So we have discovered so far that the soul is the life force, and that this cannot be understood by our own experience. It is explained that the soul size is the tip of a hair cut into 10,000 split into 10,000 pieces. I don't know. I've tried to do this experiment when I was younger, just trying to cut it. It's not possible, let me tell you. So the size of a soul is so incredibly small that it cannot be perceived by our eyes, by any scientific method. So the soul cannot be experienced by our material senses, because we are spirit souls. We are beyond matter. We are para-prakriti. We are above matter. We are beyond matter. So in this sense, how are we going to prove to so many people who believe in science, who believe in so many material practices, material science, how will we prove the existence of the soul? Prabhupada tells us that although we cannot experience the soul, we can perceive the soul through the life force it gives us. Like when we ask a child, "Oh, where is your arm?" He'll point up his arm. "Where is your hand?" They'll show your hand. "Where is your nose?" They'll touch their nose. But where are you? If we ask someone, we always talk about this concept, you're not the body, you're the soul, right? But how do we really prove that? We prove that by talking about ourselves as ourselves as the perceiver, as the witness to all that is going on the outside. When we remove all the material coverings, we are that life force. We are the conscious and the consciousness behind all that we are experiencing. So, in this verse also, we are also talking about how the soul is eternal because it cannot be cut to pieces nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by wind. And I was thinking while meditating on this translation, what is that one thing in this world that can't be cut to pieces by any weapon? Here I have this piece of paper. I can easily cut it into pieces like this. I can take a matchstick and burn down everything. The entire material cosmos is burned down by, as we read in Canto 2, by the fire from Anantashesha's mouth. I could take a little bit of water and I could drop it on my desk and my desk would become wet. And I can blow on something and it will blow away. So what is that one thing in the world that can't be cut to pieces, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by wind? What is that one thing that can't be touched by anything? In our own experience, there is no such thing that comes to my mind that can be cut to pieces, that can't be cut to pieces, nor burned by fire. Even we hear in physics, they've been cutting down the atom into so many pieces. Protons, neutrons, electrons, quarks, so many pieces they've been cutting into. But they cannot get to the soul, because the soul is the indivisible part of Krishna. So the soul is spirit, and the material scientists cannot get to it as such. So it's very difficult to understand. Bahu Janma, after so many births, can we only understand this secretive science, this esoteric science of the soul. So here we are proving that the soul is not matter, because everything we see, these papers over here, this water bottle, this phone, everything can have some effect of these natural elements. But the soul does not, because it is para prakriti, because it's above material nature. So as we see here, there is so much power invested into this individual soul, into this life force. We can experience this even in our own bodies. We are growing up. We grow up so perfectly. Our bodies are made so perfectly to adjust to so many changes. Our brains are made so perfectly to satisfy so many needs and to allow us to think and do so many activities in life. Like we are growing up, our hair is growing. If you cut it, it still grows. If your nails are cut, they will still grow. Prabhupada gives all these examples. If we perspire, water will come. So many examples of the power of the soul. Yet still there is a question. If I can do it, if I can't do it, then Krishna cannot do it. That is one of the main points of the Mayavadi philosophers. They make this point that if I can't do something, then how can Krishna do it? If it's not in my limited experience, then how can God do it? And I know that sometimes I also fall into this trap. When I hear about the amazing pastimes of Krishna, how he's done so many wonderful things, I think that is so beyond my own mental capabilities for me to understand something like that. So how do we understand this? So here, Krishna is showing us that we are actually created on the image of God. If we are perspiring water, and so Krishna perspires so many oceans of water, because Krishna is unlimited in all kinds of form. So Krishna, it is explained in Brahma Samhita, Yashyaika nishvasita kala mathavalambhya jivanti loma vilaja jagatandanatha Vishnur mahansa iha yasya kala vishesho Govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Who can understand the majesty of Mahavishnu? He lies on a bed of snakes, and when he breathes, 10,000s of Brahmandas are all annihilated, created in his single breath. Yashyaika nishvasita, in one of his nishvas, in one of his breaths, all universes are created and destroyed. Jivanti loma vilaja jagadandanatha. So many universes lie in each of the hair holes of Lord Vishnu. And when he perspires, all of those hair holes, all of those universes, as we see, expand and are created. So we understand, for simply by the perspiration of Lord Vishnu, so many universes are created. And because we are created on the image of God, because we are created as reflections of Krishna, we are also perspiring. But our perspiration doesn't create so many universes, so many wonderful creations. So Prabhupada makes this point that just by our limited experience, we cannot understand Krishna. And I think that is key to this verse in telling us that we should accept the words of Shastra as it is. Also, as we see over here in this painting depicts the soul sitting in the heart of the body, sitting in the heart of the body. This is the soul. This is the Paramatma. And the entire body is made out of 5 elements. Yet the soul is untouched, much like in verse 5:10 of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, verse 10, where it compares a person who does their duty without any attachment for result to a lotus flower in the midst of a dirty pond. The lotus flower is not touched. It is not moistened by water. It is not touched by the dirty water around it. It is seated among all of this pollution, yet it grows so purely. So that is the state of the soul and the Paramatma who sit within our hearts. So one very interesting point Prabhupada makes in this purport, because Prabhupada is the king of logic. He knows all kinds of logical ways in which to attack different views of thought that may be contrary to the reality. So he explains how Krishna is using definition by negation, neti philosophy, not this, not that, which is mainly used by the Mayavadi philosophy to disprove that we are different from God. He's turning it on its head to show us that to disprove Mayavadi philosophy. Here it says, the soul can never be cut to pieces, nor can it be burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by wind. By using the constant negation of certain terms, Krishna is showing us that actually the Mayavadi school of thought, that we are divided from the original Supreme, is actually incorrect. So here Krishna is turning Mayavadi philosophy on its own head by using their own logical system, neti. It's not this, it's not that, turning it over and using it against them. Finally, I wanted to talk about how over here it talks about how because the soul cannot be moistened by fire, cannot be burned by fire, nor moistened by water, I also thought about how on the sun planet, how we talk about how the earth is the only suitable place for life. But here, as we have defined that the soul is there by perception, that it cannot be cut, nor by burned by fire, nor moistened by water, that actually there is life on other planets. There is life on so many different planets. It's just that by our own experience, our own material senses, we cannot see it. There are living entities in fire. There are living entities in water. Simply because it is not in our experience, we do not understand it. Like, for example, Prabhupada gives the example of we live on land, but the aquatics, they live in the water. So I was listening to this beautiful lecture by Prabhupada, and he was talking about how if there are living entities that live in the water, but you can't live in the water, similarly, there are living entities that live in the fire, in the sun planet, but you can't live there. It is just because it is not in our limited experience, doesn't mean it's not true. just because we cannot lie on a bed of serpents, just like Lord Mahavishnu, doesn't mean that Lord Krishna cannot. So here we are also shown the majesty and the gulf of difference between us and Lord Krishna. And that simply by taking off the covering of material existence, one does not become one with Krishna. The last thing, Prabhupada gives some commentary that I thought very apt for today's discussion. He talks about how modern scientists have no knowledge of tornado weapons. And he talks about how the power of these weapons are so powerful that they can be done by sound, by tornado, by water, so many different weapons. If I unleash a fire weapon, you will attack with a water weapon, and then they will neutralize. So Prabhupada is explaining all of this, and of course it's not in my experience, but we read so many beautiful stories of people who use these weapons, and they invoke these mantras to use these weapons. For example, the example of King Dasharatha. King Dasharatha was so exalted in his ability to call weapons simply by hearing. His power, his Kshatriya Tejas was such that simply by hearing, he could draw his arrows and immediately kill his prey. But just one lapse of overconfidence, a little bit of lapse of overconfidence, and he kills Shravan Kumar. Another example is Ashwatthama. He unleashes the Brahmastra weapon, and because he knows the mantra to let it go, but he does not know the mantra to take it back. So because of this overconfidence, Ashwatthama creates such a havoc in all the three worlds. Brahmastra being the king of all weapons, being the fire weapon that could destroy all of the worlds. And because there was a able person like Arjuna to call it back, the weapon was duly received, was able to be taken back, and the entire world was not destroyed. So I thought this was apt for today's discussion, because when we put weapons in the hands of people who don't know how to use it, right? Gun violence and things like that are such an important discussion for in this era, especially in today's election. It's a very big issue. And I was meditating on how even in the stories we read, there are such incredible weapons used. They cannot touch the soul, but they can create so much havoc. And we see that in today's society, gun violence being such a prevalent and intimidating issue, that if weapons are not given certain priority and taught how to be used, what the practice is, then there is no guarantee that they'll be used safely. And to end today's discussion, I wanted to end with the simile of the lotus flower. The analogy of the lotus flower that sits in a pond of dirty water. Our soul is compared to that because all of these material elements, they are all matter. They can be easily taken away. They can be easily destroyed. They can be easily hurt. Yet the soul still sits there. And because it is eternal, it lives far beyond the jurisdiction of time, of kala, on the body. So I was meditating on this, and I was thinking, why should we worry about all of these little things that happen to our bodies? Of course it is important. If I just jam my finger in a door, that's all my attention will go to my finger. But if we meditate that the soul is an eternal and separate part of this body, separate individual, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, then how much relief will we get in learning that we are not this body, that we are beyond this body, and that all of these little things, they won't matter in the long run. So with all of these thoughts, I would like to conclude today's class. Thank you so much for listening, and I would love to hear your reflections, and if I've missed anything, please bring it up, and I would love to discuss with all of you.